For those with children, have you ever been somewhere, whether at a store or maybe a theme park or maybe at the zoo, and maybe you've lost sight of your child for a time and frantically began to look for them? I know I have. We one time at a zoo lost sight of our child for just a little bit, and thankfully, after a frantic minute, located him playing on something there at the zoo. It worries parents. It really stresses parents out when they cannot find their children for any length of time, or maybe as a child we have been guilty from getting away from our parents, or hiding, or leaving, or whatever the case may be. And so we can only imagine what Jesus's parents must have been feeling in Luke chapter 2 when this happened with them. If you would, read with me or listen along here as we pick up in Luke chapter 2, verse 41. That some time jumps from when Jesus had been presented at the temple, and now we find at the age of 12, as we're about to get into here. But in verse 41, we're reminded that Jesus' parents, that Jesus' family, being Jews, would go to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And so this was a family trip they would make every single year, going to partake of the Passover, as all Jews were supposed to do. And when Jesus was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem, according to the custom of the feast. And when they had finished the days, as they returned, they were returning home, the boy Jesus lingered behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother did not know it. They did not know that Jesus was not with them. They did not know that Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they supposed, verse 44, that Jesus was in the company somewhere with their traveling company and this journey that they were all making, this kind of caravan, if you will. And they went a day's journey and then began to seek Jesus among their relatives and acquaintances. So here everybody's leaving. There's this caravan of family and friends, and they're all traveling. And Jesus' parents do not realize that he's not with them. They just assume he's probably with, friends or his siblings or somebody as they're all traveling home. And they go about a day's journey, and they finally say, you know what, we better, find Jesus and, just make sure he's doing okay. So when they did not find Jesus, they then returned to Jerusalem seeking him. Now, remember, they've already gone a day's journey. Now they got to go back to Jerusalem, which will take a day's journey, and they start to look for him. I mean, I can't imagine, really as a parent, I guess I can imagine to some extent what they must have been feeling, not being able to find Jesus, being anxious, being worried, wanting to know, okay, where is he? What has happened to him? They've traveled all this time. They then get to Jerusalem. They're looking for him. And so it was that after 3 days, they found Jesus in the temple. They've looked and they've looked and they've looked, and finally they come to the temple and they find him. And they find him just sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. It was just kind of interesting to think about. I mean, where did Jesus stay? Where did he stay at night? Where did he get food? And apparently he was able to take care of himself. Others provided him with whatever he needed. But here he is, just going about his business. He's listening to the teachers. He's asking questions. And verse 47 tells us that all who heard Jesus were astonished at his understanding and his answers. So here's this 12-year-old young man, this still a boy, but his understanding is significant. He understands a lot. He's even giving answers. And the people are just astonished and amazed at this 12-year-old boy who seems to know quite a bit for his age. And so when Jesus' parents saw him, they were amazed, and his mother said to him, "Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously." I mean, any of us parents would, go up to our child and say, "Where have you been? What were you thinking? What are you doing?" And that's what Joseph and Mary do. They, come to Jesus and they're like, "What have you done to us? We have been anxious. We have been looking for you. Why did you do this?" And Jesus' answer to them, verse 49, was, "Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" It says. What an intriguing answer from their son, from Jesus. As verse 50 tells us, they did not understand the statement that Jesus spoke to them. But Jesus answers and said, "Why were you seeking me?" And he talks about being about his Father's business. And it's kind of like, well, okay, maybe next time, Jesus, you could, give some communication, make some preparations, make sure, Mom and Dad know about this. And Mary and Joseph did not understand. They couldn't fully understand what Jesus meant by that statement, but something that, Mary would ponder in her heart. As we then see in verses 51 and 52, that then Jesus, though, notice what he does. Jesus went down with them, his parents, and came to Nazareth, went home, and was subject and obedient to them. But his mother kept all these things in her heart. Again, I'd imagine Joseph and Mary both were contemplating, thinking of all that had happened, and now this. Now really trying to figure out what was going on and why Jesus said what he did. What did he mean by this? Really some deep things they were having to consider in their hearts. And Jesus, then, we are told, increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with men. Jesus continued to learn. Jesus continued to grow in his relationship with God, with others there in Nazareth, in his home, and friends and neighbors and family, but above all with God. But Jesus continued to increase in wisdom and understanding and stature and maturity. And we're not going to then see anything of Jesus until about till the age of 30. A lot of time goes by. Another 18 years are going to go by before we see anything from Jesus again. But we see Jesus. We're given a glimpse of his childhood. We're given a glimpse of him as a young man, still a boy. We see him, though, growing in understanding. We see, the Spirit with him. We see at least his growing, his learning, his maturing. And people already are amazed at Jesus at such a young age. And then we'll continue to be amazed in time to come. Thankfully, sometimes I wish we had more to know about Jesus's life growing up and, maybe the different situations that came up. But here we're given a bit into his childhood, into his growing up, and the amazing just growth that he had spiritually and in knowledge with God, with others. But Jesus is also an example. Jesus did not rebel against his parents. Jesus submitted to his parents. Jesus honored his earthly parents. And so went and lived with them, was respectful to them, was obedient to them, which is a lesson for all of us today as well. We'll think on these things, continue to grow in these things, and we all need to be amazed at Jesus and his life on earth. God bless.